Good morning to you. This is Sunrise. Lots of tweets coming through this morning, which is great for a Sunday morning. Keep them coming through. Cara Brown's just tweeted to say, oh, you can tell Stephen and Isabel really enjoy working together.
Well, it's mainly because you're just teasing me all the time.
Oh, it's really hard work. Honestly,
you tried
really,
doing
really
a Sunday morning with someone you don't like.
Oh, it's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough. But we put a good show on, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
We try our best.
Stop it, you. Right. Coming up, we're going to go through the Sunday morning newspapers today. We've got the campaigner and the writer, Julie Bindel, and the A&E doctor, Kish Rees. Oh, see, true love.
It's just
They're kind of ruining my hair, so...
Sorry.
Anyway, back to the day job.
Well, let's have a look through the papers for you this morning with the journalist Julie Bindel and A&E doctor Kishan Rees, who are here. Good morning. Front of the Sunday Express, Kishan, that's more like it, Mrs May.
So, yeah, one of the few positive headlines in terms of Theresa May, and, I mean, I can just see the spread across all the papers. You can really see sort of lots of positioning, and the knives are out for her in terms of people are briefing against her. We'll talk about it in the next one, but it doesn't look particularly strong and stable from where I'm standing, because there was something about how she was briefed. Sorry, I'll talk about it now. There's something about she was briefed in terms of her advisor was saying maybe we should get an former SAS member to give us some resilience training after the the election. So yeah, it's just fascinating, and I think the next couple of days is just going to be people basically pushing their own position.
Choice. But the problem is it happens in the world of politics, doesn't it? Whichever party you're talking about, when there's a sniff of blood in the water, it's that the sharks begin to circle.
That's right. And actually,
it was ever thus.
No, you're right.
Well.
You're right, Steve.
Oh, well, we're the shark.
Yeah.
It's a bit like a blood sport. People enjoy it. You know, the world of politics can be very dull, and you know, I mean, the Tories aren't in that much trouble. I mean, they don't really have, you know, that viable an opposition. I mean, I know that Labour did better than they were expected to, but at the moment, the Labour Party is still in such disarray with its own internal wranglings.
We see the tuition fees and we see the transition for 2 years. These are kind of ideas that are coming out of elements of Labour, and then they're being picked up on and being run with. So I don't know, is it? Maybe there is an element of opposition there. I think there are problems, don't get me wrong, but in the party, but it's been quite a turnaround.
Yeah.
Should point out we're limited in what we've got today in terms of graphics, so we can show you. So we're sticking to the front pages. But if we look at the student issue, which is coming up today, possibly talk about a freeze on tuition fees, which doesn't seem, in a sense, that significant if you're forking out £9+ grand a year. But I mean, there is clearly a move to try to arrest some of this policy area from the Labour Party. And is this perhaps just it doesn't sound as impressive as saying we're going to scrap it all, but more financially achievable?
Well, I go into universities on a fairly regular basis, do the odd bit of teaching, meet students, and I've noticed in the past 10, 15 years that the demographic has really shifted. There are far fewer mature students, far fewer Black and Asian students going through the ranks, and, you know, basically most of them are white and posh. You know, they're from the kind of middle-class background that may well be Tory voters. They may not be, but they may well be. So what the Tory party is doing is trying to appeal to those students as well as the parents.
But the official figures show, and again, I haven't looked at them in a great detail, so don't quote me as this being gospel. But the official figures were saying that the application rates were going up, and that included those from poorer backgrounds.
I think the interesting thing is the culture has changed massively. So even if application rates are going up, the culture, there's this sort of consumeristic culture within higher education. And I can certainly remember when I was a medical student, if I didn't know stuff, I wouldn't put in stuff and complain. Students have a lot of power now in the National Student Survey, and sometimes giving them the answers, providing superficial learning experiences, is that in their best interest? Certainly from a doctoring point of view, I don't think it is. But it's the knock-on effects of how £9,000 a year plus has completely changed the demographic. And I think it's stuff that needs to be considered.
OK, well, on that note, we need to take a break. Back with more for you in just a moment. So we're into the papers with Kish and with Julie. What paper is the... Oh, it's in the Telegraph, isn't it? Ignoring some EU transition rules. We're going to ignore them, are we?
Well, we'll probably ignore at least half of them anyway. But it's all a terrible mess, as your viewers will be aware, if they've heard us going on about plans to leave the EU
But
in the meantime.
it's meant to be a mess when you're in the middle of negotiations, isn't it?
Is it?
Yeah. Well,
It's nice to have
otherwise, how do
constructive
you...
talks between both sides and spirit of goodwill. At least that kind of started to come out in May's Florence speech, but then that was quickly kind of rebuffed back, wasn't it?
What by the EU who've got a massive PR machine working on it, trying to make everything look bad?
But I'm not sure we can bear this till 2021.
No.
I mean, who knows? But, I mean, obviously trade is the most important, and the borders. There are people who are worrying about being sent back to their countries of origin, whether it's Romania or wherever they came to the UK from to work. And they still don't know. They've got no idea whether or not they'll be allowed free movement.
On that point, sorry, I mean, that's awful in terms of the NHS. In the Lancet, they had something about Brexit be a disaster in every single way for the NHS.
Why?
In terms of, well, we're relying on European nurses and doctors and people coming over.
But again, I mean, this always comes up, but isn't the argument that was made by the Remain camp in this, that it's not about stopping immigration, it's about controlling immigration. Therefore, if you need people to work in the NHS, they'll be allowed
The
to
trouble is,
work
the way
in
that we're
NHS.
treating them in terms of not guaranteeing them their future, and they're in this country, a lot of them are leaving because
Well,
they don't
and
have the
applications
insecurity.
already
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
But you can't
within
guarantee the future. You can't say if you're in the country before we exit, then you can stay, on the basis that you then get a massive influx of people wanting to get in now to stay for the future.
No, but it will change the way that people in other countries that traditionally have come in to train as doctors or nurses will look at their career options. And we don't have enough here from the pool. And what was it? Who was it that said we would have how many million per week to go into the NHS
That'd been Boris
if we
Johnson,
Brexited? Right, because that isn't going to happen, is it, Christian?
No.
That's-
Although put
No, well, we
that
could do. I
figure
mean,
out
that's
again
no.
2 weeks ago in his...
I mean,
his,
they talked about it again.
Yeah.
It's
It
just...
was going to cost us more to leave
Well-
than we'll save from not being in the EU. This is,
Is it-
you know, this is
Well,
the prediction of some economists anyway.
Yeah, well, yeah. OK, well, look, we're going to leave it there and we'll come back with more chat on all of this next hour. But in the meantime, let's get a quick check on the weather with Isabel.